Malvika is a computational biologist and has been working on the Bio-IT project, and I think you'll speak a bit more about that, in Heidelberg at the EMBL. And now you're moving to a new job to work with Kirsty Whittaker, who we have heard speak earlier. So I think that's quite exciting, and I would like to hear a bit more about that. And I think what's quite interesting here is going back to when I talked a bit in the beginning of this event, is focusing on things that we think go under the umbrella of open science, but we don't always see explicitly. So there's a lot of work that goes into organizing events, building a community, building an open science community that's not just Binder or Python or being amped about open sequences on MRIs. And I think that it is really important that we make that part of such an event as well, and that is what I think we should learn about more and what we are excited about to hear from you. So welcome, Malvika.
That's extremely kind introduction. I never get introductions. I just go on the stage and start talking. Yes. As Stefan said, I am Malvika. I'll give you a little bit more about me. I'm from India. I moved to Germany 10 years ago. I have a PhD in bioinformatics. I love science. But when I was doing my PhD, I realized that I love talking to people. I really hated sitting in front of my computer alone. Though, they both are really great, but I realized that, 99% of people, in my mind, it was 99% of people would go on into their academic track. There would be very few people who will say, I'm going to go and talk to someone and I'm going to solve their problem or I'm going to facilitate something. And that really motivated me to take a community manager role at EMBL. I'm a woman. I'm from India. I'm an immigrant in Germany. I struggle to say no. I'm trying to do that more, and I urge you to do that too. Your time is precious. And I love dogs. I don't have any. I would love to have one. So I work at EMBL in Heidelberg. It's an amazing place. And one good thing about it, that it's a non-profit, intergovernmental organization. Being there makes me feel like how easy it is to make policy, which is probably not the right thing for any other places. Because it's decentralized from the government rules, we can always go and question our system, tell them this thing is not working for me. They'll allow us space to change it, and we will change it. And basically, this is why I failed to say no, because I want to change everything. I'm a community manager for EMBL Bio-IT. As bio and IT might just give you out, it's an interface for biology and people who are doing a lot of informatics. EMBL is in different sites, and what you see in red is what the amount of computation that we do. So the one which is fully red is the EBI in Hingston, and rest of them are just catching up. But in Heidelberg, where I work, we have also assessed that every year, the computational need increases. And if we look into who's actually doing computation, earlier we had this clear divide between wet lab biologists and computational biologists, but over a period we've seen that everybody is doing everything because that has become the norm. You have to do your experiments, you have to analyze your data. And all these people are not just PhD or postdocs or group leaders. They are also staff scientists. They are long-term, short-term visitors. And there are research software engineers too. So that's Toby Hodges, who I work with. It's really great to work with another community manager so you don't feel lonely. So if you are a community manager somewhere, find some other community manager somewhere else. You really need someone to talk to and care about the same thing as you do. And as I'm moving on, Renato is going to take my job, and we are at the middle of transferring all the knowledge that we have gained. There are 4 things that we care for, and because we think those are the ways you can build community in an institute like that. So one is training. If you want people to come to you, give them something, and that's the skills. That's what we give. We do a lot of programming related courses, and not just programming related courses to make people learn informatics, but also do, for example, web-based GitHub use. So anybody who's not even a researcher, like in the administrative side, can come and learn from us and feel a little bit empowered. We also do resource coordination, for example, starting from having our GitLab system or cluster system to having internal chat system. These are different ways for people to use a common resource and hence feel that they are part of something which is binding them together. And we also have information dissemination by websites and emails and whatnot. But then most important is community building, where we do a lot of informal and formal events. We do consulting, assessment, sitting down with people, having a chat with them. And if they have some idea that they want to do and they don't have capacity to do, we try to support them how they can go on and pursue it. So now I am moving on to Turing Way. I'm basically moving next week, and my apartment is half empty. I have to pack all my clothes. It's really, really difficult. But you've heard from Kirsty what Alan Turing Institute does. Most important aspect that they are interested in is to advance science and artificial intelligence, specifically in the healthcare data. What really struck me about this project is definitely Kirsty. You have met her. She is very genuinely open person, and she has genuine interest in making people come together, decentralizing whatever we are building, and allow everyone to work together. So Turing Way, this is how I define it. I think Kirsty defines it as lightly opinionated guide, but we are moving on because it is becoming now how-to data science. And when I say how-to data science, it's not that you're going to learn exactly how to do data science, but what are the best practices? How can you start your data science correctly? How can you design your outreach for data science? What are the ethics that you have to take into account? How would you communicate it to others? So there are many aspects that we will start working on, and there's a lot of room for everybody to share their own experiences. So Turing Way offers a global and democratic platform for collaboration, contribution, and skill building for everyone interested in data science. So if you are not a contributor, you can be our learners, because you can read through, you can also help us see what doesn't work, what works. And one thing that we see is that anybody who contributes should have the ownership of what they are contributing to. That should be their authorship, and in a way, because it's going to go on Zenodo or it's going to be published somewhere, it will go to your CV or profile and really help you become part of a bigger community, but also get better perspective of how things in an online world works. One thing I'll give shout out to, I'm a co-founder of Open Life Science program. I work with Yo and Berenice on this project, and it's a mentoring and training program for open science ambassadors. Three things that we wanted to do with this is sharing our knowledge that we have gained, but not just but people in our network, connecting people with each other and empowering them in some way so they feel okay to share their work and build a community around it. It was developed during Mozilla Open Leadership X cohort, and our formula is open by design. You would hear the term design a lot in my talk today. So we have currently 29 mentees, and one of them is in the audience. Yes. Cassandra is one of our rebellious and favorite mentee there. She tries to change a system that is quite old and traditional, which is thank you. Thank you for doing that. We have a lot of experts as well, and this is a pilot program we're running, and if this goes well, we hope to involve more people, and it's just not going to be 3 of us leading this. We would like to give power to people like Cassandra, who can go in their institute and run these kind of mentoring program. So again, coming back to the topic, if you would read, if at all you would read the program, it does not say designing open and inclusive communities. It says fostering open and inclusive communities. This is how I always gave my talk, as fostering, but I realized that fostering means that you assume that something has been open and something has been inclusive and you want to keep it that way. But that's not the reality. Nothing is inclusive by default. Nothing is open by default. You have to design it that way. So I'm going to do jargon busting. We have 4 words here: open, inclusive, communities, and designing. So let's start with community and community managers. Community is a social unit where members share common values and mission. It could be any common values, such as love for MRI, love for open science. You're here for a certain topic. You might find your own sub-community. It's a quite general and loose term, can be used in any place. And a community manager like me builds and facilitates a platform for such social unit so they can perform effectively. So what happens in a community space, everybody has a lot of ideas and everybody wants to do everything and everybody is very excited. They leave the community space, go back, and they don't do anything because they don't know where to start. They don't know who to reach out to, and this is where the community manager comes. And let me tell you, community manager is not a role as it will be called community managers all the time. In this case, in this conference, you have the organizer who are the community managers for you. You might be the community manager for, I don't know, a journal club that you organize, or a pizza session that you organize, or Game of Thrones viewing session that you organize. So it is really, community manager, just take it as someone who does something and involves other into it. Second term is open, and open as in open science. How many of you would need a refresher on open science? I'll give you anyway. It's it's an umbrella term. It's not one word. It has a lot of things inside it. It's a scientific movement run by a group of communities of scientists. It involves open access, open data, open source, citizen science, open education, peer review, open notebook, preprint, and everything else there. So that's what we call open science. And a third is inclusive. It's a word that everybody fears to talk about. And I also fear to talk about because it's really difficult, right? Because we're hearing it a lot, and we can't make sense of it. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Because there is someone always struggling. So inclusive is a term that describes process of inclusion by which a community values, includes, and involves diversity to improve the well-being of the community. So inclusive has 2 words, inclusion and diversity, and that goes hand in hand. You cannot have one without other. So diversity is about attracting different people, and inclusion is about empowering them by providing an environment that brings the best out of their combined background and experiences. I'll talk about it a bit more, but I'll let you focus on 2 things: attracting different people and then empowering them. It's not just about attracting them and let them be as tokens, or empowering some people in your community and not others, but it has to be side by side. So now putting these 4 topics together. First, community, social unit, common values, supported by community managers. Open science is a movement of scientific communities to remove barrier to share any knowledge. Then inclusive involves diverse people, empowers them to improve communities' well-being. So why is there an emphasis on design? Isn't open inclusive? Isn't inclusive open? This is what I would have thought like a few years ago, but the reality is open communities are not inclusive by design, by default. If you want to make it, you have to design it that way. So I'm going to give you a table. This is not a complete table. This is a table that I think of the things that I have seen around in my communities. So we have open aspects such as publication, open data, so citizen science, and so on. The main practices for them, so first is research and development, if you want to share something with someone. Then democratizing accessibility and engagement. So when you make something open access, people can access it and people can work with it. When we talk about open source, for example, if you put your code on GitHub, you in a way allow people to collaborate with you or contribute there. And final is training and learning resources, which relates to open education and open notebook. So when we think about open by default, research and development does not have reproducibility as its priority. It's not their main concern. By default, when we say democratizing accessibility, it does not need to be reusable for people who do not have the same resources as you. You can say that someone can reuse it only when they have XYZ that my institute has, else they can't. When you have else they can't, it's not reusable in reality. Then promoting collaborative work and culture, it's great to put something on GitHub, for example, but it does not mean that you're including everybody. Have you put there a guideline how to contribute? Have you put there the requirement where you need help from the people? So just saying that, hey, I have this collaborative cool thing on my GitHub does not really involve people. You need to give them more idea. You need to reach out to the right talents. And then finally, training and learning resources, they are not considered requirement to carry out any research and development. So if you're doing your PhD for 4 years, you have to publish papers. If someone says, hey, can you write training material? You're like, no, I have no time. Because it's not rewarded, right? So this is the default. This is what I see as if you say default. But when we design these, when we do our research and development, we would like to lower the barrier for reproducibility. When we know we are designing our experiments, we will keep that into our mind, that it has to be reproducible for anybody. When we are designing for accessibility by people, we will think about, can my software be scalable across different platforms? If not, what can I do? Who can I reach out to? Who can help me? So you can do it only when you are consciously working towards it. Promoting collaborative work, if you proactively include voices that are missing or excluded. Now, when I say voices, it means talents, right? So if you are working on your project and you are really good at X, Y, Z, but there is this ABC set of things that you cannot do, but you don't bother to go out and seek for these talents, then there's nobody who's going to collaborate to you. And finally, training and learning resources. First of all, it should be incentivized, because there is no way someone can use your research if you do not give them the right skills that you expect them to have in order to work with your data or work. So at the end, what it is that you have to think about empowering individual by transferring your own skills. I don't assume in academia that you're going to stick around for very long in one topic. The world is changing, and your interest will change too. And this is why we are in academia. We like this curiosity and change. So you don't want to leave behind your work. If you want someone to use it, you have to think about how you can transfer your knowledge to them. So why do we need this? Why do we need diverse perspective? So diverse perspective allows to approach questions objectively from multiple points of view and challenge our understanding. So if there is a homogeneous group of people, and if you're looking at a problem, you all would have same answer to it, and that's about it. You finish your answer, you move on. But if you have 5 people with really strong opinions, they're going to give you 5 different ideas. And this is where the innovation lies, when people challenge you. If people don't challenge you, your research will become boring. You wouldn't find it exciting because you would not learn new things, because everybody's just saying the same thing that you already know. Diverse teams also lead to better outcome. So when you enter science, you don't leave behind your cultural past, you don't behind your religious belief, you don't leave behind your identity. You come in with all of those. So in addition to scientific methods and techniques, science involves choices about what problems and population to study and what procedure and measures to use. And in making these choices, diverse perspectives and values are important. So it was only a few years ago I learned that when the clinical trials happen, or when mouse experiments happen, they don't take care of the genders if they have to test drugs. And I was like, oh, so how do I get drugs if they don't have a lot of women in their trial? So they say they take the smallest man in that case study, and then based on how the drug perform in them, they assume how it will perform in women. So just imagine if in this study there are women, They'll be like, no, this is not cool. I need women in my study, right? So this is about perspective. If you don't have heterogeneity in decision making, you wouldn't have right solution for everybody. Oh, I missed that, but that's a study from Silicon Valley where it says that it is actually better when decision making is happening in a heterogeneous team versus a homogeneous team, and the outcome and revenue, money is also high when you have heterogeneous group. And design, so diversity also leads to inclusiveness and design thinking. So inclusiveness is one of my favorite word of all time because it just includes everything. So you can stop talking about diversity, inclusion, and equality, DIE, and stop talking about these, because this one is about, it's an outcome of any inclusive policies and action undertaken in a diverse community to improve its well-being. It focuses on including people who were previously excluded. It measured in terms of eligibility, opportunity, and involvement in decision-making and leadership level. And it is achieved when members share and not compete for resources and power. So previously excluded is quite important to think about whose voices are missing in your community. I'm not going to say certain gender or certain sexual identity or certain background, but who is missing in your community? Why are they excluded? Are they excluded, or is it just you did not think about it? Not just that, diversity also improves well-being of community members. Inclusiveness approach allow us to design projects and communities that take others' perspective and level of privilege into account. So when I say level of privilege, for example, it could be economy, funding, infrastructure when you're designing your experiment. People's previous encounters based on gender, nation, career stage, culture, and language. People's background and identity that is socially stigmatized in past. If someone has previously experienced trauma, harassment, bullying, mental health condition, or people who are living with visible and non-visible disability or diseases. So there is like a huge list. If you're really interested, you will be proactive at finding what are these things, how can I take care of my community members. So one of the studies by Sarah Brownell's lab says that when people work for an organization that is more supportive of their LGBTQ community, they experience high job satisfaction and lower job anxiety. There's still a prevalent view that it is irrelevant to share LGBTQ identity in scientific workspace. So often people will say, oh, I don't need to talk about your sexuality, it's a research space, right? But one thing that you need to remember, that when people who are not part of LGBTQ enter a new organization, their first thought is, I'm going to perform very well, I'm going to get a raise, I'm going to just impress everybody, I'm going to be so kick-ass in my work. But when people from LGBTQ community enter an organization, their thoughts are like, are they going to be accepting? Do they have policies to protect me? Are people going to believe me? Should I share with my community or my colleague that I have a partner? Can I bring them to my office party? There's really like a lot of different questions, right? And this is where they cannot perform fully if they are not told upfront that this place is open and inclusive for them and there's a policy to protect them. So think about these aspects, and therefore it's important to talk about LGBTQ requirement at workspace. So how to design for open and inclusiveness? It's not a new idea. Design thinking has existed for a very long time, but we don't have a silver bullet. Here are 3 questions that I think has helped me and a lot of other people in designing in their own workspace. First question is, who is impacted by my work? Either it's my research, my community, event, who is impacted by it? Second, who is identifying problems and making decisions? Are people who are identifying problems really going into the community and asking them, or is it their assumption? Whose voice is missing? And if we bring that voice in, will their input be useful for our community research project or event? So these 3 questions have been really helpful when designing a new project. Okay, so a few examples. I've talked too much of theory. I want to also share that I actually do some of these. So at Bio-IT, we involve our community members in making decisions. We organize every second month a task force meeting where people who are actually working in the support staff, they would come and share their requirement, and they would be the people also sorting the problem. So they are the people who are making decision. We also acknowledge and reward our volunteers. One of the things that I'm proud of, that we allocated a part of our own project funding for people who are working in our community, because our project will not work if these people did not exist. And this part of funding is accessible for our volunteers. And these can be applied, for example, if they want to go to a conference that's not directly related to their research, if they want to go to a skill building workshop, which their boss is not going to pay for, or if they want to invite someone into the institute for which there is no other funding. So we try to help them in getting acknowledged for their work, but also getting a reward, because volunteering is a difficult job. You're working full time, and then you're investing some of your time in someone else's community or someone else's work, which might not be directly related to your own work. So it's great that we are in a position to acknowledge those. We also build connections through informal events, drop-in sessions. When drop-in session is consulting, people can come and ask questions, and we'll try to connect them with someone. And then we also do community capacity and need assessment. So this is about identifying problem. I don't need to identify a problem because I don't experience the problem my community members experience. So I need to go to them and ask them, what is your issues? How can we support you? And this has been quite useful in developing our strategies. And finally, we also love to party, and then we every year organize a barbecue for them to basically say thanks for their contributions. So I'm very new to Turing Way, but there are few things that we do exactly as in Bio-IT, but there are new things that Turing Way has as its feature, which is also really a lot about design thinking and inclusiveness. So Turing Way is completely open and transparent project available under open license. You can see the grant application online on the GitHub. You can see all the issues ever created, anyone ever contributed. How do we do review process? How do we contribute to anything? It's just all there. It's just how it has to be. It welcomes contribution from anyone interested with varying skill. So you don't need to be a data scientist to be able to contribute there, because we ask also cultural questions around data science. We immediately acknowledge people's contribution as author on GitHub. So there is front page where all the people who have ever contributed, they have their GitHub handle. And if whichever version goes on Zenodo, these people are counted as authors. And we're committed to designing inclusive events. For example, we have online collaboration cafe that provides support to the remote participants. This is something we run on 1st and 3rd of Wednesday. Both days are different timings, so people who are in different time zone can also join us. This is like a workspace. You don't need to come and talk to us, but it's an accountable time where you can say, okay, today I want to work half an hour, but I just want to go to this call so I know someone's watching me work. So this is something like that. But also you can ask questions about the project, and you can ask how to use GitHub, how does this project work, and so on. And the second one is we have in-person events like Book Dash with travel and childcare grants. This is where I met Cassandra the first time, and this is where I actually got to know the community first time. So there's a case study, and I will ask you to have like some sort of group activities. We have 20 minutes. Okay, that's fine. So Book Dash is a one-day collaborative event. It's like a hackathon. You go in and you start working and you finish, but during the day you get to talk to people and you give a shout out to their work and ring a bell for the first pull request. So in this, everyone works to improve Turing Way project. So that Kirsty, because she thinks everything could be a chapter in Turing Way, you would really enjoy getting your ideas approved by her. So there are a few things that that goes into designing such events. For example, securing funding to allow everyone to join. making sure that people have travel accommodation, childcare arrangement. We also make sure that we have application call with enough time so people don't need to rush into applying into it, or they can come and ask us if they have any question. We just don't change deadlines just because it's unfair to people who have respected deadlines. And we do not change the time of announcement. We really give them a decision when exactly it's said. It's reviewed by multiple people, not just one. So a lot of time, if one reviewer has conflict of interest, the other person can take over. And we have a fair rubric system. And these rubric systems are not scores. We assess application based on how concrete is the idea. Is this idea going to be helpful for Turing Way? Is this participant going to really gain something out of this event? So we have like a set of rubric. I still have to put it on GitHub. I haven't done it yet. We have acceptance and rejection letter with feedback. So one thing is, when you ask for application, everyone spends hours to write their application. It would be just polite if people can just write one line saying why did they get rejected, so they can improve for the next time. We have all information in one place. We have code of conduct and contribution guideline. We have venue catering, booked in advance. Things go wrong. Like these are, it's not I'm saying that these are always perfect. Things can always go wrong, but if you have thought about something, if you've designed it that way, you would make sure that you can address them. So having said that, I want you to, sorry, someone wants to take a picture. I'll share the slides with you all. So here's an exercise. We have, yes?
I have a question. How do you design the rejection letters? Because it could also be offending for some people.
No, so...
It would be a good way to design a rejection.
So you actually give a compliment, and the compliment, you don't need to make it up, because generally they definitely have some skills that they said that I have this skill or I have achieved this and I want to do this. So you're going to comment on one thing or other. It's like, so for example, we had to reject a younger student's application, and it just felt that this person wasn't aware of the project. They just wanted to be there and experience. So, but then our review would be that reviewers really appreciated your interest in open science and the things that you are doing, but we did not see that your idea fits directly to the project, and hence we can't accept your application this time. A lot of time, if the application is really, really good, we will ask them, can you get in touch with this person? We'll figure out another way to get your contribution added into the project. It's a new thing we're trying, but I think it's much better than sending a rejection letter with no real explanation. Okay, so now I want you to take 5 minutes if we have, turn to each other, think about or finalize one small event that either any of you is planning or any project that you work on, and how would you use these 3 questions in designing it to be inclusive? So for example, if I can talk about, if my case example is Book Dash, I'll think about who is impacted by my work. Are they researcher, PhD, postdoc, academics, or institutes? Who is identifying problems and making decision? Is it just me as a community manager, Christy as a project lead, or is it people who are allowed to give us ideas and make decision with us? Whose voice is missing? So this is something we need to go into our project and realize, we just don't know who can write about facilitating a lively discussion, and we need to find someone who's really good at it and ask them to write something about it. And then that would be about asking someone or going on the internet or finding someone and bringing that missing voice into the project. Does that sound like something you can do? Would it be interesting? Yeah, see the nodding. We have sticky notes. Form a group of 4 or 5, and you can ask yourself some questions and write your responses on it. And at the end of the group discussion, we'll ask each group to report out what they thought. Okay, we're going to do a quick report out. I know that it wasn't a lot of time, but when we do a report out, I think you might hear something new. Does anyone want to volunteer? Where we go first?
Oh, you.
I can give you.
If you can please give all the important information, but please also give it concisely, because we are a bit pressed for time.
Hello, hello. Okay. So we thought of something non-science related, and we thought about climbing events. And for the first, or to keep it concise, I think for me personally, the most important point was that in climbing events, you often have categories for men and women, so that excludes everyone who does not identify as one of the two. And that is something that struck me because I actually never thought of that. So we had that. We had, I think that was the most important point, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Actually, we didn't get that far. We were just in a very heated discussion about who to include, and also I think the thing where we stop is like how to include patients. I think that's really a challenging topic because there's always like a how to say, information hierarchy. So we always we know more than them about some parts of their disease, and so it could be challenging to transfer that information to them. And as you said, it could be also an emotional aspect of the patients because the disease directly affects them, and so this could be really a challenge in including them. But it's also really needed to hear their voice, and we were just mainly discussing about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I can comment on it. Oh, I'm just going to make myself a little bit publicly visible. So we had two things actually that we discussed. So one, I don't know if it exactly related to the event organizing. Well, one thing did. So for example, there could be on conferences, there could be in like an economic board of, for example, to go to, oh, I'm sorry. So sometimes on congresses or something like that, you have these social events that you have to pay extra for to get into. And some people might drop out because they wouldn't get it reimbursed by their research organization or whatever. So this might also be, this is something that she did. She actually included already in the administration fee that it would be reimbursed the whole picture, and which also includes the social event. So I think this is also some way to get inclusiveness. Just for my personal experience, I love doing scientific outreach. I always take this example, but I think it's very important to spread the message of research to the whole community. So what I do is I narrow down my papers to public summaries and then to lyrics, and then I put them in a song.
Are you on SoundCloud?
Well, thanks. Sorry, I'm.
You're gonna sing now.
Yeah, and then I put some animation in PowerPoint, and then everybody can just see like, hey, this is actually it, and not like fancy stuff. So this is actually also the inclusiveness of, well, I think laymen into the scientific community. So I don't know if that's.
So if that thing is missing from your life, contact him.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you very much. Who wants to say something?
Okay, so our example was a project that I'm currently involved in. It's also a non-scientific project at our institute, a green environmental sustainability group that we created. And we tried from the beginning to be very inclusive and try to include members from each level of the hierarchy at the institute, but also non-scientific staff, for example. But then we figured out during our conversation that, for instance, when we were trying to change our waste separation system, we kind of forgot, for instance, the cleaning stuff, which is kind of that obvious, but because they're not like officially internally our institute stuff. So for some reason, sometimes people really get missing, or we miss to ask people that are obvious. So I don't know, anything else? think that were the main points.
Thank you.
So we didn't focus in like any particular event, but more like any journal club, any invited speaker or something. And one of the things that we mentioned was that we are kind of aware already of, for example, how sexual orientation is something that we pretend that if we don't talk about it, it's fine and we're not actively discriminating or something. But then other, which is not okay, of course, yet. But yeah, we don't even think or talk about other stuff, like, for example, religion and ethnic minorities and how, yeah, like just not even talking about it, we assume that it's fine, that we're not saying anything bad about them or something, but those people might not feel like that, actually, and probably we should try and aim for a more inclusive atmosphere in which people feel entitled to share how they, I don't know, their worldview or how they feel about these things. And also we were talking about how many implicit rules actually we have laying around in science and research environments. And something like, for example, during an invited speaker, the first person asking a question is in many institutions the more senior person, and then only like the rest of the PIs, and then only postdocs, and then only if there's time left, PhD students can ask something, and probably nobody feels that that kind of like structure should be like that, but then PIs are asking because they don't want to embarrass the speaker or something with silence. So yeah, probably making things more explicit in terms of like communication, everybody having exactly the same right to talk and ask, because the whole point of having someone and giving a talk is for everyone to learn about it and not just making some fancy visitor thingy. That's pretty much it, I think, right?
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. If you want to share your sticky notes with me, I'll take notes of it and share with you all in a common document. I wasn't able to make it before the talk.
We also
And there are a
have,
few
the recordings, so
Okay.
something to work from.
All right. So yeah, please feel free to hand me your sticky note. I'll put them together. And everyone can also comment on someone else's comment if they have some solution. For example, what you just said, I have heard some of the institutes, they have like the people raise their hand at the same time, but it's not by who raised it first, but can we give it to a younger student or a woman first and so on. So yeah, changing how person share. But anyway, yes.
Can I add something?
Yes.
I don't know if I need a microphone.
Yes, please.
I have a loud voice.
We are.
Exactly. Just something that also came up in our discussion was maybe it could be a downside of this inclusion. I recently talked to an associate professor, a female associate professor, and she told me that because she's a woman, she's invited to many committees, defense committees, all the time, because they need women, they don't want to have a man, so they are like, okay, who is an expert in the field, who can we ask, who is a woman? She's the one. So she spends a lot of time in these panels, in these committees, and she's like, because of that, I am lagging in my research in comparison to my male colleagues, because I need to be the compensation all the time for, this inclusivity. So we also need to take that into account.
Yeah.
There can be a downside.
That's actually, yeah. That's someone terms that as poor privilege. It's like it's a privilege, but it's actually a person really suffering from that privilege. It happens to me too, and this is why I said I struggle to say no. But it's a thing that people should keep in mind. I'll wrap it up quickly. I'm there for all of you during lunch and coffee. Please come and talk to me. I want to thank all the people involved in the things, all the cool things that I do, and thank you so much, OpenMR organizers, for having me here. I feel like an imposter. I don't really have any background of MR, but I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.